break it down, a D-Generation X retrospective. I am your co-host, Nick Perkins, along with Cam, the Man Hawkins. Is that a cool nickname, Cam?
That's fine. It works.
Seahawk is a much cooler nickname. That's where they can find you at Twitter. You can find me at WrestlePerks. But we are back looking at D-Generation X and all of the things that they have done throughout their illustrious history, including, evidently, blatant racism, which is what we're going to be covering today. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we've kind of taken a bit of a hiatus just because it's the summer. We're both busy. We're doing stuff. We're going to cookouts. We're eating a lot of hot dogs.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not. I love you, but don't do it. Don't do it.
We're doing a lot of work, a lot of cool things. Cam, tell me what you've been up to. What's been going on lately?
It's been like a really busy summer. As you know, and other people know, I'm a college advisor, so like summer doesn't actually happen in college. While you might have less students for a period of time, you're still, pretty busy. Dealing with stuff from the spring, dealing with stuff coming up like in the fall, and so it's still work, but on the on the creative end, it's been an interesting few months. Like just last week, I did 2 podcasts for episode 5 of Secret Invasion. So Marvel's TV show that is going to wrap up next week. So it was cool. The first one I did with my man Rich Fan, his man WH over at Post Wrestling. They do some really good work over there. And the other one I did is with my buddies at Marvel Cinematic University. And this episode was with Rodimus Prime, aka the black guy who tips. And it was really fun. Like he's one of my favorite writers. He's one of the head writers on Bomani Jones' show Game Theory on HBO Max. So it was really cool getting to kind of talk with him again, soak up some game. I've been really back and forth a lot through Austin and San Antonio. Just last week, had lunch with my man Shea Serrano and his wife. Shea Serrano, the author, formerly with The Ringer, writes independently now. 3 New York Times bestsellers. His TV show Primo just came out a couple of months ago on Amazon Prime. So yeah, it's been busy, man. All this hard work is like it's weird. The work kind of slowed down, but like the interactions picked up. After WrestleMania season, the workload is just a little different. But I've been doing that. I did the interview and the piece with Stone Cold. That was really cool. And then I have coming up this week, I just did an interview with Tiffany Stratton, NXT Women's Champion, and so I'm gonna probably produce some writing on that. But I also am writing about Great American Bash coming up next week in Austin, and keep your eyes open. You may. This is not a guarantee. You may just see me on your television doing things. So, we'll see.
Titillating tease. That's very exciting.
Yeah. It's been cool though, man. Just we were working so hard. When I say we, not just us at the Ringer, but we, like all of us in this industry, and you can attest to it. Like we worked so hard between January and April, like content, Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, Fallout, like that first, quarter to third of the year is just so busy. And so once that passes, it is kind of trying to find your voice again, like really trying to not necessarily stick out because there's room for everybody to eat, but you want to stay interested in what you're doing. So you find yourself having to do new and different things. And so a lot of the summer has really been me figuring out where I want to be tonally, where I want to be artistically. Just had to, these things do cost money, guys. Just had to put some money into a new computer because my computer's fine, but I know fine ain't going to be fine for too much longer. And as we're talking about the world as a whole, hey, there's a writer's strike right now in Hollywood. And so it's twofold for people like us, Nick, in that we have to be careful not to overstep any boundaries, because there are those of us who do have aspirations of writing and acting and producing, and so you want to be careful. But it's also like, if you are a person who streams or who makes content that is not part of the strike, it's kind of time to get in gear. Like, this is your fall to really do your thing. And again, to do it in a way that's ethical, that it doesn't step on the toes of these other people who we look up to and appreciate and want entertainment from. But yeah, man, it's a figuring out the game right now is a lot. It really is.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to kind of think about and talk about and hopefully learn from. I think there's a lot to be learned from this writers and actors strike going on, and hopefully it ends with people getting what they deserve. I mean,
Absolutely.
You know how hard it is to write quality content and to produce stuff that people want to engage with and read and watch and listen to.
Mm-hmm.
So
what was big for me, especially like when I first started really, getting paid to write, it was, the first thing I was thinking was, okay, I've been working on 15 different projects all on my own. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm probably not eating as healthy as I should. Let's take this little bit of money and let's pay X, Y, and Z to do these things. You know what I mean? And like, the quality is better because they're experts. Like, I'm figuring these things out on the fly. These are people who've been doing this for years and years and years. Shout out to Lauren Moran. Shout out to Edited by Laura. Two different people, by the way, who really made things so much easier for me the first half of this year. So yeah, shout out to them. Like, we want the writers and the actors and the directors and people on set. We want these people to get paid, because that's how you get the best quality product. It's not running them in the dirt. And so, yeah, man, just as we traverse this, my biggest thing for the last couple of months has really been trying to put people in position, and it's gone about as well as I could hope. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's one of my favorite things about you, I think, is how much you're willing to help out other people. I think that's great. Speaking of helping out, we are going to help you, dear viewer, out, and we're going to recap the first kind of couple months of 1998 in the WWF. This was when Triple H and D-Generation X really kind of came into their own. They transitioned from being the bad guy outlaws to kind of the good guy outlaws. They feuded with the Nation of Domination, who included a guy who he was kind of on the rise as well in 1998. His name is The Rock. Maybe you've heard of him.
He's a guy. He's a guy. It's interesting. We're talking about 1998. So 1998, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And just to think, and not that he was the patriarch of the family. Like, of course, like, it's stressed that he's third generation, but to look at his individual success really allowed for a guy like Roman Reigns to be viewed as a potential main eventer. I think that there's definitely a pipeline there, because before, I mean, of course, you had acts of Samoan descent from this family in prominent positions, but not the position. You know what I mean? Like Rock. Nutrition is this really interesting thing where because Rock had, of course, the genetics of his family and the genetics of his father, he has, like a physique like Vince McMahon was looking for in the main eventers of the time. And like everybody was looking for in the main eventers of the time, and then, Roman Reigns 20 years later, thanks to, sports medicine being what it is, nutrition, knowing more about your body, like, he was able to transition into that similar look. You look at Jimmy and Jay's physiques, they are, in the best shape of their lives probably right now, especially Jay. And if you follow him, he really changed not only the way he ate, but the way that he lifted. Of course, Simone has her daddy genetics and her mama genetics. And so she has, she has a really good look. But it's interesting that he's really the origin of those guys being able to be at the very top of the pyramid. So yeah, it's interesting watching him and how good he was back then. I'm gonna shut up now. You got it. You got it.
Oh, that's a really good point, because you think of kind of like the Samoans that came before The Rock, and you had kind of like a lot of, obviously, like in great shape guys, but they were kind of thicker, and they were kind of, a little bit slower and kind of not plotting, but Rock really
deliberate,
was
definitely deliberate. Yeah,
he was the first one to kind of come on the scene and just like blow people out of the water. And man, like, we've been wrestling fans for a long time. We know how good The Rock is. We know how good he is now. Going back 25 years later, it's no surprise that he became the superstar that he is. He just, maybe more than anybody else, just had it.
Yeah.
Whew. But DX had it as well. In our last podcast, we talked about the DX invasion of WCW, which kind of amounted to little more than them just standing around outside of the arena that WCW was performing at. Could have been a much bigger thing, I feel, and I think you agree. It was made to be more of a big deal than it actually was, but it was still cool. It was referencing WCW on WWF television. It was saying Kevin Nash and Scott Hall's name. It was talking about Eric Bischoff. It was cool. It could have been bigger. The following week, they decided to keep the momentum going, and DX visited the WCW corporate offices, the CNN, not the CNN Center. It was kind of, well, they've called it looked a lot like a Sam's Club, kind of like a suburb. It was just kind of this plain, not very standout building, which they made fun of it for. It was funny. Same thing. They went, they stood around outside for a little bit. They threatened to like blow the place up, which I'm not sure how they got away with that on television, but whatever.
Hey man, listen. They were 3 years before you couldn't say that anymore.
Right? Yeah. Maybe 1998. Is that better? I feel
it's fine. Like when you get up to the camera, it's fine.
Awesome. Yeah. So on May 11th, actually, that's when they visited the CNN Center, talking with fans, security guards, telling people to suck it. The usual. Eventually, they said that Operation DX was complete, and then they utilized very bad video editing to actually show them blowing up the CNN Center. Yeah. Once again, something that you could do then, maybe not so much 3 years ago. JR on commentary actually said that Nick Lambros, the WCW vice president, actually called 911 and wanted DX arrested for trespassing and lewd behavior. I don't know. I don't know what counts as lewd behavior.
Yeah, they're gesturing. They're doing the gestures.
Can you be arrested for telling people to suck it? I
feel like you can be asked to at least leave the building for telling people to suck it. What was super interesting was it's in Atlanta. And so Atlanta, especially at the time, has like a really heavy Black population. Just watching the Black excitement for DX is like really interesting to me. Because there was people like our age now who were like going crazy over them and were just so excited. But I mean, like, what are the odds that you're at, the CNN warehouse, for lack of a better term? But yeah, like you're at CNN Center, you're kicking it, you're walking around, you're seeing the sights. You're probably a WCW fan, and DX just walks in and they're kicking it, and they're not supposed to be there. Like, that would be exciting. Right? There really was. It's like going to a concert and seeing another artist just hanging around. Like, that would be really cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It was cool. So later on that show, DX came out on Raw to discuss everything that they did previously. X-Pac grabbed the microphone and started things off and said, he reiterated what JR said. He said that WCW threatened to call the police on him, but you'll never catch us alive, you lousy coppers, he said in an accent that was actually much worse than the one I just did.
It wasn't great.
He then continued his war of words with my close personal friend Eric Bischoff. We'll get into that another time. He said that he never asked Eric Bischoff for an apology, which is what Bischoff kind of alluded to on an episode of Nitro. Mm-hmm. He said that he never asked Eric Bischoff for anything other than to be a man and fire him face to face.
Yeah.
X-Pac said he doesn't kiss anybody's ass, not Vince McMahon's, not Eric Bischoff's. So Eric Bischoff can, quote, suck on it, which we know that suck it is their catchphrase. Man. Suck on it seems so much more vulgar than like their actual catchphrase.
It's very personal. It's a very personal action. It sounds like there's a different amount of effort that would go into that, right?
Yeah. More intimate. So, oh well. Then Billy Gunn got on the microphone and said that DX declared war on the rest of the world. So you were either with them or against them, which was kind of reminiscent of when Eric Bischoff joined the NWO and told everybody that they were for them or against them. And that led to everybody joining the NWO. Horace Hogan, Scott Norton, Buff Bagwell.
I love it. Bless his heart. Like, you can't help who you're related to, right? But whenever we start talking about like the NWO being like overloaded, it's always Horace. Like Horace, it's you. You're the sign that this thing has jumped the shark.
And by all accounts, like, he's a nice guy. He's a good dude. I don't know. Horace Hogan. If we should blame anybody for the downfall of NWO, it should be Brutus Beefcake. Everybody hates Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So I'm okay with that.
The Zodiac and Booty Man, and they just. I mean, I like my homeboys too. I would find a job for my homeboy if I could, But yeah, no, you're 100% correct. Like there's Hulk Hogan. I don't think ever like he understood that being around cool guys made him cool. I don't think he ever understood that being around him didn't make anybody cool.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like the transitive property of whatever he gives off, like, never really worked for anybody else. Like, no.
That reminds me of, so I have a friend, her name's Andy, great girl. She's a photographer. Mm-hmm. She actually photographed Eric Bischoff's son's wedding years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And Hulk Hogan, and I believe it was Linda at the time, they were there. So Andy, if anybody that knows a wedding photographer knows that they hate it when people like try to pull them aside to tell them to take pictures of things, right? Like that's the one thing you don't do. So Andy's taking pictures of this beautiful wedding. Hulk Hogan pulls her aside and says, "Hey, I noticed you haven't been taking as many photos of me and my wife. So do you want to get on?" And Andy, who is not a wrestling fan, who knows Hulk Hogan like tangentially, knows of him, doesn't really care, was so taken aback. She just kind of looked at him and then walked away. And I've never heard of anybody like big dogging Hulk Hogan.
Well done. Put that man in his place.
All right, enough of WCW talk. We are talking WWF. So after Billy Gunn declared war, Triple H came on the mic, and for the very first time, Cam, he co-opted the Michael Buffer WCW main event intro. Yep. This is the whole "Are you ready?" That they would become known for literally the rest of their careers. This was the first time they did it. And I guess technically this night was like the face turn for DX, because after Triple H got done talking and once again threatened to expose himself to the ladies of Baltimore, Owen Hart came out. And the previous week, Owen Hart had actually turned his back on his tag team partner and joined the heel Nation of Domination. So now Owen Hart's a bad guy. He's coming out to interrupt DX. Ipso facto, I think this was the face turn of DX. And do you think this was the right time and the right place for DX to be the good guys?
If you watch that segment again, if you guys are following along as we do this, when Triple H like successfully gets off the "let's get ready to suck it" line, there's a grin of satisfaction on his face. Like, it worked. It worked. We've been workshopping it. It worked perfect. And then he literally tells the city of Baltimore how much he loves them. Like, this is happening on air. So yeah, it was time in that Austin's selling every t-shirt in the world, right? You're going to have your Kanes, you're going to have your Undertakers, but like I don't think The Rock even had the Blue Brahma Bull shirt out yet. I think this is before that. And so, like, there's not a void, but people are already into DX. DX is still going to be crass and violent. And so, if we also make DX the good guys, we can sell even more t-shirts. Like, I think what they did was DX was really the first group that was not initially babyface, that they were parading around town to interact with people. And if somebody saw Kane on the street and they were wrestling fans, Kane back then with a mask, they're still going to run up to him excited about it, right? But that kills the mystique of what you're doing. But when you put DX in a position to where we want you to be like against this other company, the people are going to side with who's there. Like if the NWO recreated the exact same situations, people would be, oh, NWO, we love you so much. Thank you, Hall. Thank you, Nash. Vince sucks.
Right.
The exact same person would flip that about Eric Bischoff in front of famous people because that's how people are. So no, yeah, I think it was the perfect time in that you have a plan for Rock, right? You think this guy is going to be the next big thing. You don't need him to be number 2 babyface right now with Austin. He's going to be against Austin. So who do you have after Steve Austin that people are into? Got DX right there. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Triple H literally had an entire arena saying, yes, we will get ready to suck it. Like, how much more over do you need to be?
Seriously.
So later on in the show, Triple H took on Owen Hart yet again, this time with the roles reversed. The match was a no contest. China got involved, low blow to Owen Hart. It's like, remember that eat, sleep, suplex Roman Reigns, repeat or whatever that was? That's kind of how it was with China and Owen Hart. Eat, sleep, punch Owen Hart in the balls, repeat. So that was their whole thing. But this match in particular really kind of positioned China as a badass because once she hit Owen Hart, the rest of the Nation of Domination came out, and Homegirl was holding off the entire Nation of Domination with just a chair, and they were backing off.
Yeah, they did not want to pull up for sure.
Revisiting these episodes of Raw really kind of has just made me respect China even more than I already did. Like, they really positioned her well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you know, she was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, you know, for Shawn and Hunter. They really did make her a real physical presence. They called, you know, she was an insurance policy. They deferred to her like a lot of times in conversation, even when she wasn't saying anything. Like, in a lot of ways, when I look at like a Solo Sikoa now, I see a lot of China like in that. In that, like, we know that you can talk. You don't really talk, but when you do, it means something. You know what I mean? You are going to be physical. You are going to be a presence. People are going to fear you. People are not going to disrespect you. They're going to hesitate to play you. So yeah, absolutely. Like, it really did establish her. And again, like she has the size about her already, but you got to put her in situations like this. You got to put her in real physical danger situations to see how everybody else is going to react. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and props to like guys like Mick Foley, probably more than anybody, that really like gave of themselves to make China. Like, he was the one more than anybody that was willing to take a low blow or a body slam or a power slam. Like, and I think that did her a world of good. So later on that episode of Raw, Stone Cold took on The Rock. I think this was like the second or third time they had fought. Obviously, it's a few months before their big feud. And the show ended with the Nation of Domination coming out, attacking Stone Cold Steve Austin. And DX actually made the save. This is literally a month after WrestleMania 14, when Stone Cold was like DX enemy number 1.
Yeah.
And now they're making the save, which absolutely solidified the fact that DX were the good guys. So the next week, DX came out and X-Pac once again led the charge. The former 1-2-3 Kid stated that he knew there were a lot of WWF wrestlers. He stopped himself, said superstars, because even back then in '98, Vince McMahon hated the word wrestler, evidently. He said that he wanted to he knew that these other superstars wanted to fight DX. X-Pac said he had game, China had game, Triple H had game. These other guys didn't have game, which evidently was like a Spike Lee reference. That's what Jim Ross told me. I have no idea. Just do you know?
Yeah, so it's Spike Lee's movie He Got Game with Ray Allen and Denzel Washington.
Okay.
There's a song on the soundtrack from Public Enemy that's called He Got Game. And they kind of do that thing. He got game, you got game, we got game.
Okay.
Yeah. So that
makes sense then. That's a good reference.
Yeah. Is it a good reference?
It's a little co-op.
I think that what's interesting about white people is that like you can if you're on Twitter like for any period of time, like there's certain pages you can follow. I think it's called AAVE struggle tweets, so African American vernacular struggle tweets, and so they like make fun of the accounts that try to use like black words like in their tweets, but it comes across just like whatever. So yeah, I mean like X-Pac, cool guy. I think that he was like, wow, this is a movie. Public Enemy made a song about it, so I could probably just recite the hook and it'll sound like it doesn't sound like anything.
The kids love
they love that. The kids love Spike Lee. Yeah. So have you seen He Got Game, like the movie?
I have not, no.
Okay. So the rough premise is, and I forget, it's based off of some amalgamation of players, but basically Ray Allen plays Jesus Shuttlesworth. Jesus Shuttlesworth is top high school recruit. And just like how Spike Lee set this up, like his girlfriend is Zoe Saldana, like from way back. Oh no, it's Rosario Dawson. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm way redating it. Rosario Dawson's his girlfriend. She's a pretty Puerto Rican girlfriend. So she was somebody like that. Right. And then his dad is Denzel Washington, but his father's in prison.
Okay.
And basically schools are coming to the prison to try to convince Denzel to get Ray Allen to go to their school. And so it's kind of about their journey. What you kind of find out is his father accidentally killed his mother in a dispute. And so, yeah, it's about their relationship. And Ray Allen actually does some very decent acting. Very decent DECENT, because we've seen the bad ones, but yeah, very decent acting. It's a movie that probably would have served society better as a PG-13 movie, but there is a scene on a recruiting trip where Ray Allen is having a threesome with 2 porn stars in a dorm. And I don't mean like the idea of having a threesome. I mean like one's riding him, the other's riding his face. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah. So, but again, very important movie. You should know about it, and that's why you don't know about it.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch it. That sounds. I love Denzel, and like Malcolm X is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, one of the best movies ever. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll add that to the list. That's funny though. Oh boy, when white people try to sound cool, they just do not come off well.
Yeah.
Speaking of white people not coming off well, Triple H told all of us to get ready to suck it again. And then, for some reason, he told the crowd that he was one hell of a drummer. He could bang a skin. No idea what that means either. He said that the ladies could twirl on his stick while he beat on the tom-toms. And I don't even think that's like the right verbiage for like the drums and stuff. But
it didn't come across great. But I know like way back, native drums were made out of like some type of hide. So there's the skin part. But they used to call having sex hitting skins before you and I were even considering anything like that. Yeah, like the rap music my parents used to listen to used to call it hidden skins.
So they're listening to like rap music from like the 60s and 70s.
Well, no, from the 90s, Nick.
Okay.
But I mean, like what my parents would be listening to, who were like 30 at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy.
But again, if you're not cool and you like, okay. When I was a freshman in college, I moved to Austin the very first, like the week after I graduated, right? And so we all stayed, everybody who went for the summer stayed in this one small dorm, Kinsolving. And that's why, and I probably told you this before, that's why like me and PJ Tucker are friends, because the basketball team stayed there too.
Right.
All right. So it was this kid named Melvin, and Melvin's like a successful stockbroker, something now. Melvin Ike. Melvin was great looking kid, a million muscles, played football in high school, but didn't go to UT for athletics, went for education. But he walked on to the football team. But the thing was, Melvin's from like a white suburb, right? So Melvin he had a book of slang words. I kid you not. He had a book of slang words. And so like I literally watched him one time. We were at like a probate or something. I watched him go up to Derek Johnson, former UT linebacker, former Kansas City Chiefs linebacker. I watched him go up to Derek Johnson and start try to incorporate the words from this book into conversation. And DJ was just like, when somebody's faking it. Wow. What is that? That's almost 20 years ago. That was ridiculous. Come on, Melvin. You were better than that. But yeah, it was nasty.
I don't know if I've ever had in my life a legitimate like spit take, but that just happened.
Melvin, it was ridiculous.
Thank you for that. I'm glad. This is why we have you on the podcast to explain things that I will never have a
for these long sweeping anecdotes to take us away from what we're actually talking about. You're welcome.
People love the anecdotes. Getting an education. So finally, Road Dogg got on the microphone and did his whole spiel, and it's really amazing how much of DX was just catchphrases. Like I noticed, for like week after week, for 4 or 5 weeks, it was just them. X-Pac would say something, Triple H would do his thing, Road Dogg would do his thing, like rinse, repeat for weeks on end. It's amazing.
People are killing LA Knight for doing the thing that the successful people do.
Yeah.
Listen, I got the utmost respect for Kevin Nash. Like any opinion he has, I'll sit there and hear him out because typically it's well thought out or it's coming from like a good place, right? Absolutely. Kevin Nash, like the irony of Kevin Nash saying, hey, man, he's just doing what Rock was doing. It's like, dog, but like you was there when Rock was doing it and you got a lot of money off that. Like, I hear you, but this is kind of how things should go. Like LA Knight's not even wrestling barely, and he has the crowd. But you're right. So much of it was catchphrases. And as time went on, it's almost like the people in charge asked for less and less and less of that so that it could be more about the company and not about the star.
That is a big point. I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but
I'm watching this as we're talking. I watched Val Venus beat Flash Funk. Val Venus beat Too Cold Scorpio straight up. And you know why? Because the machine was behind Val Venus and people wanted to talk about jizz.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So do you think then that, and we'll get back to DX, but this is interesting. Do you think that they will allow LA Knight to kind of reach his potential, or do they want to keep him in his place?
So I think that LA Knight's 41 years old. Right? Like there's way too much. There's a lot of debate going on right now on the internet about, striking while the iron is hot and doing right by your talent when they're over. And I want to ignore all that for a second, right? Let's not talk about right or wrong. I think that LA Knight's ceiling is higher than Bobby Roode, and I really like Bobby Roode, and I thought that they should have done more with him. In hindsight, I really do think that. I think that LA Knight is probably, if it was up to me, LA Knight's winning the U.S. title at SummerSlam. I just think that Austin Theory, he's not dead in the water, but they put him up there thinking that he was going to get over doing something that he's never done. He's like Grayson Waller's way more natural than he is at being like a slimy piece of shit. You know what I mean? And Theory has the look, he has the moves. I just they don't know what they're doing with him yet. LA Knight should be there, and they should not shy away from a guy who is selling you a bunch of merch that just says yeah on it or LA on it. Like, it's so easy. Yeah. So I mean, like they should go with him. I think that they are going to get in December, he'll be in a better position than he is in July. I think so.
Yeah. I hope so. What a cool story. Yeah. I have realized watching like the CM Punks or the Daniel Bryans or the Sami Zayns, if you have like a cool real life story of like battling the odds and like working your ass off, immediately that endears you to people. That's why people love Cody Rhodes right now. Like, I hope that happens for LA Knight. He deserves it. He put in the work for sure. Triple H more or less put in the work as well. They called out the Nation of Domination. Triple H specifically called out The Rock and said, with us, it's not know your role, it's shut your hole, which is a very Triple H thing to say. Well, The Rock didn't let that slide, so he came out. Rest of the Nation came out. They battled like they're going to do for the next few weeks. I want to talk about the member of the Nation of Domination that, like, one of these things is not like the other. You have The Rock. You have D'Lo Brown. You have Kama Mustafa. You got Mark Henry. And you've got Owen Hart, he's a de facto member of the Nation, despite him being Canadian. Right? What do we think about Owen Hart in the Nation of Domination?
Technically, Rock's half Canadian.
Okay.
Technically, that's right.
Yep.
So while he shares half an ethnicity with everybody else in the Nation, he shares half a nationality with Owen Hart. You know, and Rock, I don't know, even when Rock joined the Nation of Domination, in his initial promo, he says, it's not about the color of my skin, it's about respect.
Sure.
Owen Hart said, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. You know? Yeah. And he's been getting a raw deal, man. He's been getting a raw, like, it's impossible not to talk about the treatment of Owen Hart and not talk about Owen Hart's death, because they're intertwined, right? And not that Owen Hart being disrespected is what led to its death, but there's no finality. You know, like you never got to see Owen watch Rick win the Owen Hart tournament. You know what I mean? Like it sucks, because like I don't think Triple H hated Owen Hart as a human being. I think Triple H was in position. Owen Hart wasn't in position. And he played his position. You know what I mean? Like it's rough, but you know, I did like seeing Owen Hart paired with a bunch of guys whose initial thing was, we're not getting the respect we deserve. But like, not like the Job Squad saying it, like guys who would be Intercontinental and European and tag and world champs. You know what I mean? Like I love that. Even if the aesthetic wasn't there, there was definitely a commonality. There was a common foe. And there was a commonality to ideals and desires. So yeah.
Okay. You know what? I'm sold. That makes sense. Maybe they could have added like one or two other people to it, just so he didn't look like such a fish out of water.
Seriously.
But you know, I mean, he was a good addition. Like Owen Hart and The Rock, like that's a good team.
And it's interesting, like Owen Hart, almost any group Owen Hart joins, he's by default the best wrestler. You know what I mean? Like D'Lo was figuring it out, but he was getting there. Of course, you know, Rock, insane athleticism. Whatever he lacked in knowledge, he made up for in just desire. And then, you know, Mark Henry, again, we're figuring out, you know, Godfather, we know what you can do. You're good at the things that you do. But yeah, Owen Hart joining your group. Owen Hart is by default the best wrestler in the group.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a few weeks, it's kind of the same combination. DX comes out, cuts a promo, Nation comes out, they battle. We're going to skip ahead to the June 8th edition of Raw, which featured a vignette in which DX walked around New York City promoting SummerSlam and doing DX things. And by DX things, I mean just blatant racism. remember this point. It's important later. So they're walking around New York City, and I'm sure you've been to New York. There's a lot of different people just walking around. They made a whole blog about it. The Humans of New York. There's books. There's a lot of different people, a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different stories to tell, right? DX chose to just grab the lowest hanging fruit possible. They walked around, got people to say "suck it." They came up to an Asian woman and asked her if she was going to SummerSlam. Fair. She didn't know really what they were talking about. She may or may not have spoke English, but she definitely wasn't a wrestling fan. So she kind of just looked at them all confused. Like, so then Road Dogg asked her if she had seen Godzilla. But that's not all. They also went to a New York City bodega, as per usual with this group of degenerates, reached for the lowest hanging fruits. They spoke with the owner, and Triple H used a very typical, like, Simpsons-esque, thank you, come again. Like, I don't even know if it's racist for me to, like, quote what he is saying right now. But, like, that's what he decided to go with. They also found a young woman literally swarmed around her. It's like this woman, rest of DX around her, like, telling her to take her boobers out, which she did. And I don't want to suggest that, like, they forced her to do it or anything. But, like, imagine a video camera in your face, 4 or 5 dudes around you. But then there's more. They went up to a cab driver and once again asked if they could take, wait for it, if he could take them to Pakistan in his cab. So this was I completely forgot about this video. Like, we're doing it about the Nation parody, and we'll get into that. This was not a good look for DX or the WWF. Like, and obviously we have the benefit of 25 years later. We're a lot more, like, sensitive and knowledgeable about these things. Like, we know now and can say that's not a good thing to do. But like, holy fuck, that's racist.
I mean, listen, whenever a white person is coming at you with a camera, you should run. You just should. Like, nothing good is coming of what they're about to do. Right. It's interesting in that, like, while I agree that it was super tasteless, that's what people who had video cameras, like, were doing and are doing. So it's like, as much as I don't like it, it wasn't dishonest, even if it was gross. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, even if, like, I'm like, I couldn't imagine going up to somebody and doing that. Like, yeah. It wasn't great. But what's interesting about it is, like, again, when they're at, like, CNN Center and, like, it's like a group of black people, they're not doing none of that. Right. You know what I mean? Like again, this is very, very, very by the book, late 20s, early 30s white guy with a following in public. Like, this is that. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, you've seen enough people try to pull a prank on the wrong person and get cracked. Yeah, now you've gone viral. Yeah, so yeah, it's really interesting. But again, like, don't worry, I'll be offended later. But this was, like, as bad as this was, like it's exactly what you would expect, just from, like, a certain demographic of people. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, it was nasty. It was nasty.
I'm glad that we've grown as a people. For sure. That we know. It was cool though. So, and in their defense, they did cut to a video where they, like, helped an old lady cross the street as well. So they kind of balanced it out. The cool thing about these vignettes, though, besides the racism and sexism, is it was cool to just see these 4 men and China just interact with each other. Like, you could tell they were friends. This would be like if you and me and a few of our buddies went out and we're just, like, having fun, and you could feel that. And I think that's what made these skits so successful. You could tell they were having fun. That made you have fun too. I'm gonna read a little segment from the Are You Ready Unauthorized History of DX book that I bought in, like, 2006 from Shop Zone. It was allegedly written by DX. It was definitely ghost written, but they do kind of touch on that a little bit. Triple H wrote that when Shawn left WrestleMania, there was a big void for me. My best friend was no longer there, but on the other hand, there was also a huge burden off of me. Shawn was pretty messed up at the time. Sometimes it was a struggle to get him to shows. There were times when he didn't want to do anything, and there were times when he bitched a lot. The weeks leading up to WrestleMania were the most stressed out I've ever been. There was a good chance Shawn wasn't even going to show up. He was just so angry. Every day he would find some little thing that made him so furious he was ready to leave. He made outrageous demands on everyone. He tried to be the biggest jerk. And because of our friendship, it was my responsibility to help make sure that he did what he should do. So when he left, there was a part of me that was relieved because he had been so out of control. With Dog, Billy, Kid, and China, we just had fun. We all got along. With Shawn and me, it was different. We were by ourselves. It went very quickly from anger and heat and people wanting to kill us to people loving us in the new incarnation. With Shawn, we had a friendship and all we had was each other. We formed a close bond. With the four of us now, it was just like being in college or high school with a bunch of other jackoffs, together with China, who played at being the straight person in the group. We would go out and do the dumbest things we could think of. Whatever we thought was funny, we would do. Sometimes it was funny, and sometimes it really sucked. Sometimes it was so bad it was funny, but it was just off-the-cuff stuff. Most of us, it was just us trying to make each other laugh. And I think that's a really good point that Triple H made. Like DX, when it was Shawn and Triple H and China, it was super entertaining. Mm-hmm. But you could tell that, like, underneath, like, the dick jokes and the making fun of Sergeant Slaughter, there was an air of, like a layer of just anger and resentment. And, like, just, you could feel it bubbling up.
Yeah.
With this new group, like, you could tell, like, the burden on Triple H was relieved. They were having fun. He was laughing. He was smiling. Like, that had to have been just, like, such a fun time for him. So I've asked you before. I want to know again, though, what version of DX did you like the most, and what version do you think was more successful and more entertaining?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, like, they probably got paid the best when Triple H was heel world champion and brought them back. So 2000-ish, right? Sure. I think that Road Dogg in particular, and Billy Gunn, because of what they've been doing, they both had to kind of find themselves as singles wrestlers a bit more. And so they're probably, like, at the peak of their talents at that time. I'd probably still say, like, it's hard not to be the best. Like when you have Shawn Michaels, it's hard not to be the very best version. But probably this one here, though, like probably the one that we're looking at now, because everybody's hungry. You know what I mean? I think that as far as the New Age Outlaws go, this is when they're at their very best. As far as a team, like, they're still edgy to me. Billy Gunn is doing his best to dress like more of a slut every week. Like, one of these, it's either the 18th or the 25th. Like, he literally comes out in, like, boy shorts, like short girls shorts with the slit like this on the side of the leg. Like, everybody else is already in trunks, Billy. Like, what are you doing? So yeah, I think, and to be a strong faction, your opposition has to be strong, and they got The Rock on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, and then of course it eventually branches off into, you know, like your Canes of the world. Early on, it was Foley and Funk. So yeah, I would say, like, as far as effectiveness versus opponents and opportunities, this is probably the best one to me.
Yeah. I think I prefer the Triple H and Shawn Michaels version just because Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Absolutely.
This sounds terrible. I like that he was angry and, like, just so frustrated all the time. I'm glad he, like, got his stuff together and is so much happier now. But, like, angry, sarcastic Shawn Michaels was the most entertaining to me, even if it came at, like, the price of his own mental health. Like, it was worth it.
Yeah, outside of specifically what he did with Jericho and what he did with Taker. Yeah. As far as, like, an on-screen character, The DX run, the first DX run was the best of him for sure.
Absolutely. So Triple H, they came out again, and X-Pac once again started off the night with his manic rock star energy before Triple H asked us again if we were ready. And so we, like, when we do these podcasts, we watch the shows like leading up to this stuff. So we've watched like 4 or 5 shows. Each one of them is Triple H doing the "Are you ready? No, I said." And nowadays, I can't help but think of like that meme or that tweet where they're making fun of the guy, like the typically white guy that says, "Hello, New York, are you ready? I can't hear you," and just making fun. Like, it's such a dorky thing to do, and I can't help but think of that now when I see Triple H doing this. It was a lot cooler in '98. Nowadays, I don't know.
No, I dig it.
But so they called out the Nation of Domination again, but this night the Legion of Doom actually came out, which was weird because LOD were good guys at the time, DX were good guys, so this was kind of an interesting thing. So Legion of Doom came out and they said, "Hey, we want a match. We want to fight for the tag team championships. Give us a match." Triple H said, "Okay, well, if you want a match, all you had to do was ask." So he booked, because evidently he had that power, Legion of Doom versus New Age Outlaws. But the Disciples of Apocalypse came out and they said, "Hey, wait a minute. We beat the New Age Outlaws a couple weeks ago. We deserve a match." So that brought out Commissioner Slaughter, DX's old nemesis from 1997.
Mm-hmm.
He came out and he made, and I think this may have been like the first or one of the first times this match happened. It was a triple threat tag team match, meaning it was Legion of Doom versus DOA versus the Outlaws. Whoever won the match won the tag team titles.
Mm-hmm.
Slaughter. So it looks like Slaughter once again kind of stacked the deck against DX, but they had something up their sleeve. And as soon as Slaughter announced this, I remembered what happened 25 years ago, because I remember loving the end to this match, which the match was good. It was fine for what it was. But Skull or 8-Ball, they were twins, so you can't tell, they tagged in Billy Gunn. And then Animal tagged in the Road Dogg, presumably meaning that they wanted the two to fight. And so Triple H, he and Chyna kind of spoke back and forth. Chyna whispered to Road Dogg something, which it'll be important later. So Billy Gunn and Road Dogg are kind of circling each other. You think they're going to fight. They lock up. Immediately, Road Dogg takes the pratfall. Billy Gunn pins him. 1, 2, 3. They win the match. They outsmarted everybody, once again proving that DX are the smartest people in the room. It was. I remember when this happened. It was a callback to December of 1997 when Triple H and Shawn Michaels did the same thing, and it was genius. It was so cool. Do you remember when that happened, Cam?
Yeah, for sure. That's why Triple H has that European title he cherished so dearly, right? It just made sense. You try to, I think in both cases, you try to let DX's hubris get the best of them, when in actuality, like, they're not trying to one up one another. They're trying to one up you, even at the sacrifice of a win-loss record. Like they are about themselves. They are insulated and they are secure within themselves. And so, try to play them twice and it did not work. And like you said, like, there are very few finishes from the Attitude Era that you remember visually. You know what I mean? Like, just to pull a few out, the European finish is one. That tag title finish between DX and Road Dogg is one. So where like Kofi and Xavier revisited it in the last couple of months, tried to, and it got broken up. Right. I remember, like, of course, dumpster finish with the New Age Outlaws and Funk and Foley. You remember, a bunch of Austin. You remember Austin getting the title back from Kane with the stunner. But there aren't a whole lot that stick out, especially with DX. Like, you do remember, and we're going to get to it. You remember the SummerSlam finish with DX. You remember Triple H turning on X-Pac right there at the end. But this is one of those ones that really kind of stand the test of time in being a unique finish and also showing what the character was at the time. So for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It just proved that DX, like for as childish and immature as they were, like they were still they were smarter than a lot of us. They were certainly smarter than Sergeant Slaughter. So it was really cool. The following week, however, two DX mates actually did fight each other. It was the beginning of King of the Ring, 1998, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But in the first round, Triple H and X-Pac were pitted against each other. And you might think that they'd once again kind of go back to the well that Outlaws and Triple H and Shawn Michaels did. They didn't. They both wanted to win. And so they just kind of like shook hands and said, yeah, may the best man win. And they actually had like a pretty good match. And back in 1998, it was kind of a big deal to see Triple H and X-Pac, especially because this was X-Pac's first match back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So a big thing too, like, you don't think about it watching it in real time, but like, yeah, we're talking about this is what, May the 18th or May the 25th?
I think it was actually closer to June.
Okay. So if we're talking first week of June, he's been there 2 months.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's been brawls. You've seen him in jeans, combat boots, leather jacket, but yeah, there has been no wrestling. Yeah, and so yeah, like you said, it was a big deal, and also I think it's a source of pride because he was, one of the very best light heavyweights in the entire world, and he got to showcase that some in WCW, but it's weird, like being the primary cruiserweight in the hottest group in the world somehow canceled each other out. Like he did some, like, my favorite time of him is WCW. It's him stealing the cruiserweight belt, him stealing the US belt. Like, because for 20 years, like, why didn't everybody else just take the belt if they wanted a title shot?
Yeah.
Take the belt, tell them they don't get it back unless y'all wrestle. Like, let's do that. But yeah, so it was, hey, I'm still very, very, very good at this. Let me get in there with the person I trust the most in the world right now to show you how good I am at it. So yeah, absolutely.
And he did. I mean, he sold his ass off for Triple H. They put on, like, I would have watched that match for 20 more minutes. It was really good. Unfortunately, the Nation of Domination had to ruin it for everybody. Rock came out. He was standing at the top of the arena in the crowd, called out Triple H, distracted him while Triple H was looking at The Rock. Owen Hart came out of the crowd, attacked X-Pac. He gave him the old atomic drop on the guardrail, which kind of incapacitated him. Triple H looked back, saw his friend was hurt, so he left the ring, was checking on him, and then in the ultimate like babyface move, X-Pac knew the ref's going to count us both out. Triple H get back in the ring, so at least one of us can win. So he like told Triple H to get back in the ring. Triple H did. He won by count out, no harm, no foul. It was just a really good, it was a really good segment.
Yeah, and again, like solidarity, between brothers. Like this is about, us winning. So what puts us in the best position, not just you in the best position. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It also marked the first unveiling of X-Pac's new gear. X-Pac throughout his career, whether he was Lightning Kid, 1, 2, 3 Kid, X-Pac, 6-Pac, Sean Waltman, he's had a lot of different gear. So I kind of want to know, like, what was your favorite gear that Sean Waltman wore?
Oh, it's definitely WCW black gear, gold and red lightning.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll put like a 6-Pac on the side or a Wolfpack on it. It's my favorite. He was amazing.
Mine was actually when he returned to the WWE version of the NWO, and he had those
the Ken Shamrock tights with the NWO on the side.
Yeah,
those were dope. Those were
cool. Those were very cool.
Yeah.
Anytime I get a WWF video game and create an X-Pac, that's the gear that I give him. But,
yeah, I think that's his default gear in 2K22. If you have the NWO pack, yeah, for sure.
Oh, cool. That's cool. One day we'll do like a long form study of X-Pac's career. I think he's finally starting to get his flowers now. boy, oh boy, what a talent. What an incredible
Yeah.
guy. We'll get into that. But today we're going to talk about King of the Ring a little bit before we get into the Nation of Domination stuff. Because King of the Ring, I would argue, was maybe one of, if not the most important pay-per-views of this era of WWE. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but we would be remiss if we didn't talk about 25 years ago, The Undertaker and Mankind fought in a Hell in a Cell. I think it's maybe one of the most important matches ever in WWE. Certainly one of the most important matches of Mick Foley's career. This was the match where they met. They started the match at the top of the cell. Almost immediately, The Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the top of the cell into the announce table. Foley climbed back up the cell, was chokeslammed through the roof of the cell, and got up and wrestled again for like another 5 to 10 minutes. Cam, tell me, like, what was going through your mind when you saw this originally or heard about it originally?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've revisited it. Like, tell me your thoughts on Hell in a Cell from 25 years ago.
You know, as somebody who, you know, I'm like 12, 13 when it happens, I know that this is a show written by somebody and the people go out there and do what they're told. But it was probably the first time I really understood like sympathy in the way of, yeah, this is like a dastardly do anything character, but like, wow, he really went up there and did that and took that and kept going. You know what I mean? Without knowing like the intricacies of exactly how things work. I thought it was bold as hell. You know what I mean? Like the visuals, they'll never recreate anything like that because now everybody will do something like that. And so it's not, you know, special. And not that people wouldn't have went through a wall for Vince way back then, but you know, it was this guy at this time, and part of it is how they shot it. You know, watching Foley kind of crash into you from the top of the cage. You know, get chokeslammed through it. You know, knowing that his teeth went through his lip and he kept going. Like, oh man, it is. I try not to critique the amount of danger somebody should take relative to their profession if it's what they choose to do, right? Mick Foley's also like a very smart person, a very well-read person, a person who I think understands the world and wants better for it, you know. But you know, he said, I can't jump high, so I jump from high things. Right. You know, it was somebody who wanted to leave a mark in what they did and understood that the best way for them to leave a mark was to have a mark left on them. You know what I mean? Like literally. So looking back on it, I'm glad he's still with us. I'm glad that, you know, he's a fully functional person. You know, I'm sure there are things that he's lost along the way that he won't get back. And that night did not help those things. But it was what he chose to give to his job. And he's here to say that that's what he chose to give. And so I respect it on that level. You know what I mean? I'm glad that for me personally, if I would never have to see another ladder match for me to enjoy wrestling. I would never have to see another Hell in a Cell match for me to still enjoy wrestling, even though I think they can be valuable. So, you know, it sobered me up in a lot of ways. Seeing that at a young age and watching, you know, what that kind of evolved into over the years. But yeah, absolutely one of the most important things. The Undertaker went from person who is scary to person who does scary things.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it definitely added to his legacy as well. And so, yeah, there's certainly a lot to it.
Yeah, that shot of the cell coming down with Undertaker, coming up with Undertaker standing on it like that. Yeah. Whew. That was not all that happened to King of the Ring, though. This was also featuring a first blood match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kane, which, unless you were there in 1998, especially now with all the stupid bullshit that Glenn Jacobs decides to say, like, it's hard to understand how unstoppable Kane seemed in 1998. Like, this dude was almost undefeatable, other than the fact that The Undertaker did beat him like 2 or 3 times. But So when it was announced that Steve Austin had to fight Kane in a first blood match, we were all asking, like, how can Stone Cold beat him? How is it's impossible. And it was impossible.
And then he came out like, so I believe that we were getting, at that point, we were getting Kane with one arm exposed.
Right.
But then when he came out that night, he covered both of them up.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you to not play fair now? Like, yeah.
Kane cheated a little bit. And now, yeah, all that had a chance to bleed, I guess, were his hands.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, Undertaker came out, may or may not have been aiming for Kane, but he hit Stone Cold with a steel chair, busted it open. Stone Cold was bleeding. Ref saw it. Ref called the match.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kane is your new WWF champion. He was the first one to end the reign of Stone Cold Steve Austin, if only for one night. What were your feelings when Kane won the match?
So I don't think I found out till the next night. No. This was definitely a scrambled pay-per-view night because I remember being so excited to watch Raw the next night because Stone Cold lost. Yeah. Stone Cold lost. And then Stone Cold didn't lose a year into his reign. Stone Cold lost 2 months later. Right. Like, what is going on? Just that, specifically that, like, you know, it's Austin, and correct me if I'm wrong, like Austin takes the chair shot, but Austin is like on the ground like this. Right. And then he gets up and is ready to fight again, and the ref sees it, right? Yeah. So, you know, knowing that he lost fairly but unfairly, I think was important, you know, because, hey, why'd you come out there in trunks, dummy? Like, put some clothes on. But then flipping that to the next night, because again, the next night is like, I don't know what number that show did. I feel like of 1998 specifically, episodes that didn't have Mike Tyson, that probably was like one of the biggest episodes of the year. Because how do you follow up from this? And then he comes out, he jumps over the top rope where Kane's about to accept the title that's in the podium. He jumped over, he closed out Kane, he's going crazy. Such a fond memory. Absolutely.
And then you alluded to it. The next night, Vince McMahon came out. He called Kane and Paul Bearer out to present Kane a new WWF championship. Of course, Stone Cold interrupted that, and he challenged Kane to a rematch. And we've had big title matches on Raw before, but in my mind, Stone Cold taking on Kane in the main event for the WWF Championship, that was maybe one of the biggest Raw matches of all time. Stone Cold challenged Kane. Vince McMahon said, you know what? If it's okay with Paul Bearer, it's okay with me. Paul Bearer said, you know what? If it's okay with Kane, it's okay with me. Kane nodded, said, yeah, I'll take you on, which made him seem like a badass, which was great. So the main event was set. It was Stone Cold versus Kane. And I remember the final moments. Kane had Stone Cold ready for the tombstone. Stone Cold backed out of it, turned him around, hit the stunner, 1, 2, 3, got the title back. It's one of the few Raws that I remember like the back of my hand.
It's one of those finishes, man. Like I didn't say it purposely when I talked about it a second ago because I knew we were leading up to it. But that's one of those finishes, man. Like, Stone Cold lost the title. Stone Cold gets his rematch, and you're so used to rematches on Monday Night Raw being schmozzes, right? Because that's what happens. Because you're leading to the pay-per-view. Nope, we got to put this thing back on him now. Loved it.
It was great, but. Now, what we're actually here to talk about, the following week, it's a week after King of the Ring, Triple H, DX, feuding with The Rock and the Nation of Domination. This would be the feud that would carry on through the summer, but this moment is maybe the most talked about moment from that feud. DX parodied the Nation of Domination. They came out dressed like the Nation. They mocked their catchphrases. Triple H taped IC on the European Championship because Rock was the Intercontinental Champion at the time. It was, at the time, one of the funniest things that DX had done up to that point. Now looking back, there's some questionable stuff. Had they just kept the costumes and like the prosthetic noses and the catchphrases, all would have been fine. But they also decided to utilize blackface. X-Pac dressed up as Mark Henry, put on like a fat suit, legit like painted himself black. And back then, like nobody really talked about it. Dave Meltzer wrote about it. I'm going to read that real quick. He talked about how great Jason Sensation was as Owen Hart, and we'll come back to that. But he said they had Triple H play The Rock as the Croc, and although every line was predictable, it was still funny. Road Dogg was hilarious as B-Lo, while Billy Gunn played Kama as the Godfather, and X-Pac played Mizark Henry, which is Carney for a mark. They talked about Henry being willing to eat shit, because obviously The Rock's catchphrase at the time was, "Do you smell what The Rock was cooking?" X-Pac said, "I don't smell what The Rock is cooking, but I'll eat it anyway," alluding to a story that may or may not be true of a couple years prior. Mark Henry had been signed for a lot of money, and people were resentful of that. So somebody took a shit and put the contents in Mark Henry's sandwich, which Mark Henry continued to eat. That obviously, like the trick to ribs is to not sell it, right? So Mark Henry didn't. He just allegedly ate the whole sandwich. So X-Pac referenced that, which wasn't even like the most controversial part. Whatever. I'm gonna, before we get into our reaction, I'm gonna read what Triple H said about it, because he was not sorry. On July 6th, we pulled off our first parody. In this instance, we played the part of the Nation. As usual, our actions were not controversial. It was fun doing the Nation parody. The creative team told us to dress up like the Nation and make fun of them so we could turn it into a program. Kid did not want to do it. I remember having to hold his arms out so he could put the sweatshirt on to cover his fat pad so that he could be Mark Henry. He was like a child saying, "I'm not doing this. This is stupid." He really hated the idea. Then when we got out there and the people started reacting to it, he was really hilarious. When we got to the back, he couldn't stop talking about how great it was. And I was like, "Shut up. You didn't even want to do it." When we all sat down trying to come up with the verbiage and the game plan, I remember Rock was very sensitive about race. He came up to me during the day and said he thought it was wrong that we were putting black paint on our faces like it was a minstrel show. I explained that we weren't making fun of you because you're black. We're just making fun of you for being you. If I didn't go out looking black, if I'm ghostly white, then I'm not The Rock. And I just look like an idiot. Mark Henry is really dark. If Kid went out there pasty white like he is naturally, he's not going to look like Mark Henry and the skit won't work. Still, Rock was against it. I think once he saw what we did, he was okay with it because he saw that it wasn't about being black. It was about making fun of these characters. This parody was the kind of thing you could do with 10 different people and get 10 entirely different kinds of skits. But I think that with the gel that we had as a group, we were able to do it, and it really worked. And once the creative team saw what we could do, they felt like we could do just about anything. So you have The Rock, a black man, at least partly, telling Triple H, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this." Triple H saying, no, it's fine. And then they did it. Triple H said that Rock eventually warmed up to it. That may or may not be the case, but I mean, what do you think, man? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if I tell you what I'm not comfortable with and you still do it, you don't respect my level of comfort. Like that's plain. And listen, there are a lot of people who would say you can't be sensitive and fuck your feelings and all that. It's like, okay, but like if The Rock had whooped his ass backstage, whose fault would it have been? You know what I mean? Like the idea that if you can't make fun of me without putting on a minstrel show, you're not good enough to make fun of me. You know what I mean? Like, I make fun of people all day, every day that I don't look like or sound like, and it works.
Right.
It's easy. People give you enough rope. And so, yeah, man, I listen again. You got a bunch of late 20s, early 30s white guys. In the, we're in the South Park era, as it were. Some people will hide behind the idea of, I make fun of everybody, so you're not allowed to be upset when I make fun of you. It's like, but was it good? But did you do it in a way that's funny as opposed to being offensive? Like, if something is funny in 2000, it should still be funny in 2010. It should still be funny in 2020. It should be. Everything doesn't stand the test of time, and it's okay to admit that. I will say this. The pushback, the reason people push back on it in 2023 is because of what happened in 1998. You know what I mean? Like, Triple H was able to convince Vince McMahon that Booker T did not need to win the title 5 years after this,
Right.
because of preconceived notions. And like, listen, I don't think Triple H is a racist. Don't think Billy Gunn's a racist.
Sure.
Don't think X-Pac's a racist. Don't think China was a racist. I'll stop there. But I don't think that that's within them, but I also think that the way things were working at the time, I understood why they thought it was okay and why they can get away with it. All right. I also know that Triple H knows Triple H would never entertain the idea of doing something like that on television right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, Vince did the Muhammad Hassan, not Muhammad Hassan, Vince did the Jinder Mahal Nakamura thing. He tried to do that with an Indian guy making fun of a Japanese guy. Roughly the same part of the world, roughly. And it was like, no, you can't do this. Like, this is not okay. We are all to a point where we understand these things cannot be done. Like, so I'm not a person who's like, let's hold 1998 against this group of white guys forever. But I am like, look, if you watch the progression of their business specifically, you understand why things like that don't happen anymore. Like, imagine them trying to do that to The Rock right now. The Rock is in a position where just about anybody on the planet, like, think about how weird this is. Regardless of where you work, if you don't have a contract that guarantees your employment, The Rock could probably get you fired from there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, The Rock is one Instagram video from you losing your job. And so Rock was not in a position of power to where that wouldn't fly at the time. But I tell you what, they wasn't going to do it to Ron Simmons.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there was Triple H and The Rock being contemporaries contributed to a lot of things, right? Triple H thinking he was the contemporary of Steve Austin contributed to a lot of things. But like, specifically, a lot of things could fly because politically at the moment they were about at the same spot. And on top of that, Triple H works for a bunch of old white guys, right? The creative team was a bunch of young, but I think I'm really, really smart white guys.
Right.
Like Vince Russo is the man over there at this point, right? So like, Vince Russo, hip white guy from New York, hangs with the brothers, thinks that, we can do this in a classy way and it'll work. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, I love Quentin Tarantino movies. Quentin Tarantino don't fool me. He sneaks them in because he thinks he can sneak them in, and sometimes pass it off as art or conversation. I know what you're doing, bro. But like, yeah, it's not something I have watched in its entirety in probably 15 years because I know too much about the world. I know too much about where that comes from. And I know too much about how these preconceived notions carry over into life. And then people either think that's what you are or wonder what's wrong with you if you are not. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, man. Yeah, it's a tough watch. It's a tough sell. But as bad as it was, it exists so that it doesn't have to exist anymore. So, and that's why when they remixed it the second time, what you got was a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll get into that sometime. And you're right. And I do feel like, I mean, probably not Vince McMahon, but the rest of the people have kind of learned from it. They actually cut that segment. We watched,
you can't find it
on Peacock, and yeah, they cut it. So they know that it was wrong. And I mean, we haven't really seen stuff like that since, other than Vince McMahon calling John Cena his
yes. And then having Booker T bug his eyes out of his head as a response. Yeah.
So my question to you is, would it have still been as entertaining, to Triple H's point, had they not done the blackface?
The answer is no. He's 100% correct. It's as entertaining because of what they did. The question is, who's your audience? You know what I mean? Like, you're doing this for a bunch of white guys. You know, like that's the thing. It's not like they would not do this same skit. Like, where were they that Monday?
Oh gosh, let me find it.
Because like you're not doing that at a rec center in Atlanta or Houston or Cincinnati or Cleveland or you're not or LA. You're not doing that in one of these spots. Like you're doing it because you're safe to do it. You know what I mean? Like, just like there was stuff that they had to stop doing when they started to get on TV that you couldn't do in like the high school gyms and all that. Like that's like Jim Cornette couldn't have New Jack come out on WWF TV and do what he was doing and talk about OJ and them like on Monday Night Raw. You know why you can't do it? Because it would hurt white people's feelings. White people in charge. You know what I'm saying? And so on the flip side, you're doing this for a bunch of white guys. And so like you're not, the people who are offended are only your coworkers and not your audience, at least in real time, the majority. Like, not that there aren't white people who are down for the cause, but demographically, the people who would be really upset about this would be 1 in 10 people. Like, not who would be upset or would think it was distasteful. The people who would think it was really upsetting was 1 in 10. They were willing to take that risk for laughs, So
yeah,
we ain't the only group of people they did that for. I'm certainly not saying that's the case, but on that night, yeah, that was the case.
Yeah. The one good thing that maybe came out of it was Jason's Sensation.
He smoked it.
He was so funny. I wonder what he's doing now. Maybe we can get him on the podcast. Maybe I'll try to reach out for him. That'd be cool, right?
Just have him play people. That'd be dope. Yeah. And the best thing about it, and not to like jump around, but the next week when Owen slapped him, right before Owen slapped him, they literally had him come out and do a bunch of voices. It was so good. It was so good. He did his HBK is fantastic.
Oh yeah. His Bret Hart was good. Yeah, that was great. So that was one of the good things. Do you think that, how can I phrase this? Do you think that WWE specifically, but pro wrestling as a whole, do you think that they have used racism to kind of further their own stories? And do you think that's a fair thing to do? Like you mentioned, New Jack.
Some of my favorite, like, there was a time in PWG where the people who, like, some of our favorite people in wrestling were just out there throwing out the N-word like it belonged to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course. And I mean, we don't we don't have an industry that is not capitalized off of racism, whether it be literally the first industry that capitalized off of racism or any today. No, it's wrestling is a reflection of the people it wants to entertain, right? The people it wants to entertain, I'm not saying they're all racist. I'm saying they all deal with race in some way, shape, or form. WWE, AEW, Impact, like this is kind of an American promotion thing specifically, but they have absolutely used the people's ideas and perception of race relations to produce acts both good and bad. You know what I mean? Like, putting Starks next to Hobbs, next to Taz, next to Hook, and pushing Brian Cage out of that equation is absolutely, and like, look, Rick and Hobbs get along great, but it's absolutely about a similarity and a familiarity. It's about Hook having this relationship to hip hop. It's about Taz being confused as being black for the last 30 years of his life. You know what I mean? These things play into it, So yeah, I mean, that's, Action Andretti and Darius Martin like our tag team right now. For what? Because they look alike. Like, and they're both very good, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying that familiarity that is breeded from things like racism. Again, not calling Tony Khan a racist flat out. What I'm saying is that familiarity of putting those guys together plays into some of the same ideas of Triple H saying, hey, if we don't paint him, nobody will know what's presented to be him. It won't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, that's there. And listen, guys, if you listen to this, before you write your long, stupid YouTube response, like, and you got to be careful. Like, of course, there's a relationship with Io Sky and Asuka from way before they were in WWE. There's a reason that they let Io Sky and Asuka go off on each other and never explain to us what they're saying, but we have to go back and find it because somebody we know speaks Japanese, like on social media, and can translate it. You know what I mean? Like there is that idea of this is what people think of the world, and especially the people they don't know, and so let's play that up. Absolutely, man. Like listen, white people have been in charge forever, and when white people have to present to other white people something that's not white people, they do it in a way that they think what they can identify with. That ain't necessarily racism, but it is damn near close. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's what it is.
Cousin of racism. Yeah.
Like, on every show, you got like AEW or WWE. You can tell me 10 different kinds of white people you got on each show. You just can. And when I start asking you, okay, how many different kinds of Latin acts are on your show? How many different kinds of black acts are on your show? How many different kinds of Southeast Asian like characters are on your show? And it goes down. Part of that is due to percentages, but part of it is also people who did not necessarily grow up in a diverse space having to present something that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. This was a great conversation. It's everything that I wanted it to be when I decided that this would be the subject. But the next week or 2 week subject that we're going to do, you can tell me how you feel about this. We're going to skip ahead about 4 years. We're going to skip all of the 98, 99, 2000 DX stuff. We'll come back to all of it. I want to talk about the kind of fake reunion between Triple H and Shawn Michaels as DX, and then the subsequent feud that led up to SummerSlam 2002. I think that's one of my favorite stories in wrestling. I think it was the beginning of Shawn Michaels' kind of rebirth, no pun intended, in WWE. It's one of my favorite feuds of all time. And I think it'll be a good break after talking about 1998 for so long. What do you think?
100%. I would love that. Because like jumping around is what makes this fun. If you do it in order, you're done at some point, right? I think that'll be fun because it's Triple H at his purest, I guess. You know, peak of his powers. This is before John Cena's John Cena, before Randy Orton's Randy Orton, before Batista's Batista. Like it's all prior to that, and so it's post post Austin and almost post Rock. Like we're about to be there, right? So yeah, absolutely. I would love to talk about that because telling the story of what happened when is great and valuable. Talking about motivations and desires and how they influence stuff at that point. That's the fun stuff. That's what we want to get to. So absolutely.
We are all about the fun stuff here at Break It Down, a D-Generation X retrospective. Cam, thank you for your time. Viewers, thank you for your time. Please like, subscribe, comment, retweet, share it on all your social medias. Tell your friends that we are breaking it down every other week, sometimes every other month, but eventually we will break it down. So I am Nick Perkins at WrestlePerks. He is Cam Hawkins at Seahawk, and we have got 2 words for you.
Good afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.